Greetings! Welcome to part 9 of my series on the science of Hinduism. So one of the claims that Plato already makes in the comment section of one of my videos is that there's a Vedic book that is over 5,000 years old, where it's prophesied that the Hindu god Krishna will at some point be reincarnated as the Buddha. So I've got this book. It's called The Hindu Traditions. It's written by Professor Mark Musi. He's one of those professors that's done a bunch of great courses that you can find at thegreatcourses.com. But according to his glossary, it says that the Buddha lived circa 490 BC to 410 BC. So either the story of the Buddha is a work of fan fiction based on a 5,000-year-old prophecy, or the prophecy was just right. Those are the only two options. Oh, wait, no, that's right. There are other options, aren't there? Yes, like, for example, Plato already got the date wrong. So this ancient book that Plato already claims is over 5,000 years old is known as the Bhagavata. Or at least that's one of the things that it's called. Actually, if you look this up on Wikipedia, you'll see that the Bhagavata is part of a larger collection of texts known as the Puranas. And, well, we can actually just check our Hindu traditions here. According to Mark Musi, it says that the Puranas were composed between 300 and 1700 CE. The Christian era, or common era, whatever you want to call it, right? 5,000 years ago, that would have been like in the vicinity of like 3,000 BC-ish. But the Puranas were not written in BC, they were written in CE. Right? They were composed after the Buddha supposedly lived and died. Now, based on the dealings that I've already had with Plato already, I think the way that he would respond to this is to say that the dates that I've given are wrong. Now, as we've already established both in this video and in the previous videos, I'm the guy who's citing mainstream academia, right? I'm the guy with the credible references. Plato already is the guy who's arguing against what mainstream academia has to say. Now, this does not necessarily mean that I'm right and Plato already is wrong. Maybe all of my credible references are wrong, right? Well, since I am the guy who is using credible references, Plato already, you have to understand that if you claim that I'm wrong and that all my credible references are wrong, well, I require you to explain to me what the evidence is that demonstrates that we are wrong. What is the evidence that demonstrates that the Bhagavata is over 5,000 years old? And of course, the reason I even have to make this point is because so far he hasn't even explained the evidence that the Bhagavata is over 5,000 years old. Now, as I've been working on this series, I've noticed that there's a well-known, real basic intellectual principle that Plato already has been neglecting to keep in mind. And that is that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence to substantiate them. Now, with that out of the way, we do need to keep in mind that when ancient texts are written down, very often they're actually based on an earlier oral tradition. So basically, at least some of the Puranas may have existed in an oral form prior to the Christian era. It just becomes a question of how much prior to the Christian era. And of course, dating an oral tradition can be more difficult than dating an actual text. But this does not mean that it's completely impossible to get some sense of roughly around the time that an oral tradition was in existence. Take, for example, Plato already mentioned the god Krishna, so it becomes relevant to ask, when in history do we even start getting mentions, in written texts, when do we even start getting mentions of the god Krishna? And it turns out that when we first start getting our mentions of Krishna is roughly around the time of the Buddha. So if both Krishna and the Buddha came along around the 5th century BC, but the written prophecy doesn't come along until the Christian era, well, we don't seem to have good reason to think that an oral version of the prophecy predates the Buddha. That said, we do know there have been tensions between Hinduism and Buddhism. Buddha has been seen as kind of a rebellious figure, an atheist. How dare he? Which is why it's kind of odd to me that there'd be a Hindu prophecy about Krishna being reincarnated as the Buddha, but maybe someone was trying to make peace. So with this prophecy, we appear to be dealing with a situation kind of similar to what we're dealing with in an Egyptian prophecy about the King Amenemhet I, or as he's nicknamed in the prophecy, Ameni. This is something that the Egyptologist Bob Breyer talked about in his lecture series on the history of ancient Egypt. This is another one of those great courses you can find at thegreatcourses.com. But he talks about how during Ameni's lifetime, he had a prophecy written to legitimize his succession to the throne. So, basically he's like telling people, hey, look, I'm supposed to be your king. It was prophesied, even though the prophecy technically wasn't written until his own lifetime. So, the people, of course, don't have any way of knowing that. Just kind of like informs them, hey, there's this prophecy that you guys have apparently never heard of, right? And I am the fulfillment of that prophecy. Yeah, it looks like that's basically what's going on with this Hindu prophecy. If there was an oral version of it, prior to the written version that we got in the Christian era, well, it looks like it happened either during the life of the Buddha, so after the Buddha was born, or even more likely the case, probably after he was already dead. So I don't think it's something that the Buddha came up with during his own lifetime. I think more likely the case it's something that religious people came up with later. But the most important takeaway from all this is there's just no good reason to think that this prophecy actually predates the birth of the Buddha. Alright guys, that's it for this video. I hope you all enjoyed it. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and share it with other people. If you're interested in watching my future videos, please subscribe to this channel if you haven't already, and I'll see you all in the next one. So have a good one, guys, and peace.